Yo, what's going on guys, it's Cynical and welcome back to another episode of Sea Salt Snippets. Today for you guys, we've got some spicy topics to talk about, so without further ado, let's just dive straight into it. Now, today's episode of Sea Salt Snippets is going to contain two rumor-based topics, so you know how these go guys, just be sure to take those with a grain of salt. We've also got some further Melody of Memory stuff to talk about, not overly too much, so let's get into it. Let's start off with the Melody of Memory stuff. So, very recently, the Japanese Melody of Memory website was updated, just giving us a little bit more information on the different systems that will be included in the game. Now, a lot of this we have already talked about that came out of last week's massive news drop for the game, out of the numerous amount of interviews that were conducted with Tetsuya Nomura. So I'm not going to completely cover this, just pretty much read through the stuff that gives us more information per se. I do want to say a massive shout out to Ryuji over at KH13 for the translations. Obviously this is all in Japanese. If you guys do want to see the complete write-up over on KH13, I'm going to leave a link in the description down below. So first things first, both the playstyle as well as difficulties have been separately mentioned. Now, this was one thing that was explained to us last week, though the confusing thing here was it wasn't really overly too clear if the playstyle and difficulty is one thing. At this point, because these have been separately mentioned on the website, it does make me believe that difficulty is one thing and playstyle is another thing. So yeah, it seems like you're going to be able to mix and match the difficulty with different playstyles. Just to go over this one more time, there are three playstyles in Melody of Memory: normal style, one button style, and performer style. And the difficulties we have are beginner, standard, and proud. Just below the difficulty information, it does also mention that each world has its own museum where you can relive moments from the series that passed here. So although we know that a lot of Melody of Memory is acting as a series recap thus far, it really seems like Square Enix are kind of going balls to the walls with that idea, with literally each of the worlds having their own museum section too, being able to sift through the different things that have happened in each world up until the current point in the series that we're up to. Although I know a lot of people are saying as of right now that we don't really need too many more recap things, as a lot of that has already happened, and that it's important that Square Enix start thinking about the future events for the series. Being that this is a bridge from one saga to another in a funny sort of sense, I think it is also a smart idea that at the same time it also pries into a recap, preparing everyone for what's to come, with giving them a refresher of sorts. I know us hardcore Kingdom Hearts fans are at a point where it's like, okay, we really don't need a refresher, but keep in mind, due to Kingdom Hearts 3 coming out, there have been so many people that have finally decided to give Kingdom Hearts a chance. And for those people specifically that are only just getting to the series now, I think this is an important setup to have going forward. Square Enix have obviously managed to set this up in a premise that makes sense from a story perspective, and because Kingdom Hearts is a game that is just so rich with story information, and that there's just probably too much context when it comes to the overarching story of the game, I really don't think it's too left field to be seeing something like this. The website goes over the three different song modes that will be in the game. Now, these are Field, Memory, and Boss Battle. We have talked about this, but gives us a little bit more context towards the boss battle side of things. It says right here, defeat the boss and dodge its attacks by staying within the rhythm. You can deal special attacks that will trigger as you combo. So it seems like the more prompts that you get in a succession, which is counted as a combo, eventually Sora, or whoever you're playing as, will unleash a special attack. We've seen Sora use Ars Arcanum against both Maleficent and Xemnas within the trailers, and this has been a little bit confusing just because there hasn't been a apparent ability crystal on the music track. So rather than in the classic field battle song mode, where you have an upcoming ability crystal and you have to press triangle to collect it, then you've now got a special ability to use. In boss battle mode, you will unleash abilities via comboing. Two new tricks for the multiplayer mode have also been revealed via the website. The first one right here is blind guidance. If you're hit by this, your button timing guide will not be displayed temporarily. As you're progressing through a song, little reticles are slowly honing in on each of the prompts or targets that you have to hit. This helps you keep in sync with the button prompts against the actual rhythm of the song. So if this trick is used against you, then that little heads up display will be temporarily removed. And the other one right here, HP Swapper, this will swap your HP with your opponents, share the pain of being at low HP with your your opponent. Note, if both are at full HP, this will do nothing. This trick is absolutely going to sting. Let's say that the enemy is on basically just like a little slither of health. They whip out HP Swapper, you fail a few prompts, that's it, game over. I can see HP Swapper is going to be insanely useful and annoying at the same time. Okay, so moving on over to our rumor-based things. Now again, take these with a grain of salt, but it seems like we might actually have our first potential Kingdom Hearts 4 rumor. This is coming from Emrakaya, who ended up revealing that there is apparently a Kingdom Hearts Disney Plus series in the works. This was a massive thing that flooded out quite a few months ago, where multiple different insiders ended up reporting on this as soon as Emra broke the news. Now, we are still yet to see if even that is actually a thing that is happening, though, of course, if Square Enix do decide to step forward at some point to officially confirm that yes, there is in fact a Kingdom Hearts Disney Plus series in the works, then this would most certainly give some legitimacy behind this Kingdom Hearts 4 claim. This is the claim right here. Pre-production on the 4th Kingdom Hearts game began last November. I have heard from sources close to the game that Frozen was eyed as a level. So some pretty basic claims to make, though I have to say that it's interesting the specific mention of Kingdom Hearts 4 is entering pre-production as of November of last year. As of right now, it kind of seems as if the next major Kingdom Hearts game may potentially come out in 2022 due to a recent Tetsuya Nomura tease, and that yes, it would make sense for one of the next big games to come out during that year, as it is the 20th anniversary of the franchise. You may also think, well, that's not really exactly enough time to get the next big installment out if the game is entering at the very early stages of development late last year. Then that only gives about 2.5–3 years development time. Now, the thing to keep in mind is this time around, all current HD assets for Kingdom Hearts have already been made. Square Enix had to start from complete scratch for obviously Kingdom Hearts 3, and not only that, but there was an engine switch partway through development, switching from the Luminos engine over to the Unreal Engine 4. More assets had to be made as almost everything was lost. So to develop the next Kingdom Hearts title, namely the next big one, it will not take anywhere near as much time as it took to create Kingdom Hearts 3. If we're looking at a development period of 2.5–3 years, that is more than enough time to bang out the next installment. Of course, new assets will definitely be made for the next installment, but what I'm saying here is Kingdom Hearts for the Unreal Engine 4 and Unreal Engine going forward in number 5, all of the groundwork has already been created, making this development period of the next big installment less strenuous. Frozen 2 was also mentioned here, and I think honestly at this point it's pretty much a no-brainer that even if it's not going to be in Kingdom Hearts 4, at some stage Frozen 2 will show up, right? One of Disney's most wildly successful and popular IPs of all time. We made this call for Kingdom Hearts 3 with Frozen being included in that. And although, yeah, it was cool to see Frozen being revealed for KH3, I don't think anyone was really taken by surprise. It was bound to happen. So I'd say even though Frozen 2 wasn't as successful as Frozen 1, especially in terms of the reception side of things, I can still most certainly see Square Enix using it. One idea that I've kind of thought would really match up well with Frozen 2 and the themes of Kingdom Hearts, especially right now, is the whole thing in Frozen 2 with Anna and Elsa being the sort of bridge to that of the guardian spirits. In a funny sense, you may almost consider Sora to be a kind of bridge for all of those previous Keyblade wielders from the age of Kingdom Hearts Key. We obviously saw that connection in the Keyblade graveyard between Ephemer and Sora, enabling Sora to call forth the spirits of literally hundreds of different Keyblade wielders from ancient times. Seeing these two themes mix and match, and to give us more context towards that Ephemer moment in ancient Keyblade wielders that connected to Sora in the Keyblade graveyard, within the context of Frozen 2 with everything to do with Elsa and Anna in that film, I think would make a lot of sense. Another thing too, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen Frozen 2, spoiler alert, there is that whole thing in number 2 where Olaf ends up dying and then he is brought back, so within the most recent KH3, we have tapped into that whole theme of death, obviously with what's going on with Sora right now, so I could definitely see those two things overlapping as well. And last up for today, we have some stuff towards the Final Fantasy XVI rumors that have been been floating around. Now, just in case you guys haven't, be sure to check out my first video talking about this if you need a bit more context towards the different rumors that have been floating around about a Final Fantasy 16 this year. It almost seems like it's something that is supposed to happen at some point, with rumors floating around that it was meant to be revealed during the first initial PlayStation 5 reveal stream throughout this year. I'm going to leave the link to that video in the description down below. Last month, there was a Final Fantasy 16 Twitter account that was created on August 21st. It is currently a protected account, and quite often before the reveals of certain games, some developers like to create their own self-contained Twitter pages for that particular game that is still yet to be revealed. We know that Square Enix does this with each individual different Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy 15 has its own Twitter page along with the Final Fantasy 7 remake, so it would only make sense that 16 would also get its own dedicated page too. The naming of the Twitter handle for the Final Fantasy 16 Twitter page though differs from what Square Enix usually use, and that is using Roman numerals. Here we can see that they're actually just straight up using a 16 in the handle, FF16_JP, which would pertain to the Japanese version of this account. Though yes, it's very suspicious that rather than XVI, we just simply have 16. Now this could be the fact that a handle that goes by the name of Final Fantasy XVI already does exist. It was created all the way back in 2017, and I doubt very much if Square Enix have any sort of connection to this account, but it's always possible for companies to be able to claim certain handles, not all the time, but on odd occasions. Though if Square cannot use that handle, then it means they'll have to resort to other means and just simply use the numbering of 16. An English handle for the account was also created in August too. It also seems as if the emails that are attached to both the EN and JP version of the Final Fantasy 16 accounts could be that of Square Enix related. It's too hard to tell at this point. There's also that tactic of using a dud email at first and changing it to an official one once the page has been officially revealed, as this is a sort of method that people have been using over the past few years by going over to password reset, entering in the handle, and giving you an idea as to what email is attached to that account. Most of the characters are starred out, but it gives you a general idea. So at this point, we don't know if they are actually official. We know that there is a massive PlayStation 5 event happening this week, with Sony confirming that they are going to be revealing a bunch of stuff, hopefully also that long-awaited PlayStation 5 price point and release date, but there is going to be some game announcements and updates here too. Shinji Hashimoto even subtweeted the Japanese version of the PlayStation 5 announcements tweet saying "oh!" Now, his tweet was only up for a few minutes before it was quickly deleted. This is probably because a lot of people were being led to believe that perhaps maybe this is some kind of hint or tease, but honestly speaking, I think it's even more suspicious that he removed the tweet fairly quickly. In case you guys don't know, Shinji Hashimoto is sort of known to, I guess, just drop little hints or teasers of sorts for upcoming events by like subtweeting things out of excitement. This has happened with Kingdom Hearts 3. I remember specifically when we were waiting for the XO18 event. Leading up to that, he was doing a lot of very suspicious quote tweets. This was of course for Kingdom Hearts 3, and yeah, it turned out at XO18 we ended up getting a brand new Kingdom Hearts 3 trailer for the 100 Acre Wood, so just keep that in mind. One other thing to throw into the mix here too is Imran Khan, who is the senior editor over at Game Informer, who has been known over time to drop hints towards upcoming announcements and reveals from time to time over on his Twitter account, has mentioned that at this PlayStation 5 event it seems like it would be good timing for Final Fantasy 16 to show up. Take this as you want. I don't know if you want to consider this to be a hint or tease of sorts, but interesting just knowing Imran's connection to that of the gaming industry. However guys, that is all for today's episode of Sea Salt Snippets. Please be sure to leave your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. With all that being said, dudes, I'm Cynical. Hopefully you're having a fantastic day, and I'll catch you dudes in the next one. Peace.